Hi, this is Kelsey, and I'm here with Emily, and we're going to do a video review of the Unlimited Potential versus Edward Gaming Game 2 that happened this past week in LPL Week 3. Or 4. Yes, Week 4.
Four.
I'm awesome. It's been a blur. As you can see, say hi, Emily.
Hello, all.
So we're pretty much going to mute the stream and do it over. Obviously, we're not casters, well, Emily has casted before, and she's fine
Oh
at it.
god.
And she's fine at it. I'm just like really terrible, so we're not going to do the play-by-play thing. And obviously, the game itself is really well casted by Frostgren and Seda. We're just going to cover some details or some niches, especially like from the unlimited potential side, because we've watched them in LSPL. We have some of their background, etc. And also talk about some of the item and the warding interactions that you only really catch like if you're watching the game a second time anyway. So that's what we're going to do here, and so let's get started with some of the picks and bans and stuff. So the first ban from Unlimited Potential side is Sivir. If you know anything about me and follow me on Twitter at all, you know that I'm a big fan of teams that ban Sivir because I think she is probably the strongest champion in the game in terms of what she provides for a team. Like, she does a lot of damage with the auto attack reset, the fact that the Ricochet does bonus damage, all this other stuff that's really, really strong and overlooked, and the fact that she gets like a movement, attack speed increase in her ultimate. So she's just strong in terms of damage, in terms of utility, in terms of like the spell shields. She's just like a really great champion. So, and she's really good at aiding like teams that aren't necessarily the strongest at rotations because she's very straightforward. She gives you like the first towers early. And so I think she's like a really strong champion for EDG in particular, especially since Deft is really good at using cooldowns. Alright.
Yeah, Victor, Rez, Bando. Victor's probably just because the previous game to this one, Punished was on Victor, and he actually did a really good job of, doing the damage when they needed him to. I'm not like a huge Punished fan. I'm not really convinced, although he does have a good game in this game. But his Victor in the previous game was really good, and they set up team fights well for him to just be able to, laser straight down.
Yep. And also Victor right now, he kind of went from like a mid-game champion that fell off because his hex core could only be upgraded once, and it was like kind of a waste of an item slot in many ways once you got to the late game. Now it can be upgraded multiple times. All of the upgrades like buff his stats, they buff his abilities. It's just, he's like really, really good scaling. He's in a really good place right now, especially since they fixed the rework, so makes sense to ban it in a lot of situations if you know that the enemy team has a Victor player.
And by Cinderfish.
Yeah. So also LeBlanc ban is usually pawn targeted because he is like such a strong laner in terms of what he likes to play. The
Rise obvious, and then
right.
Yeah, you want to talk about Urgot?
Urgot, as soon as they banned the Urgot, you kind of telegraphed that they wanted to pick the Callista. So, especially since Edward Gaming in the previous game had such a poor performance on Callista, they just didn't ban it. I think, to me, that suggests that they weren't treating the team very seriously, just kind of letting them have it. Or they prioritized the fish, because in LPL, Long has been the primary carry, but I feel like in LSPL, this was kind of like a secret that they didn't really pull out until like this game. Sketch was really the carry of the team, so... and then a lot of LPL teams don't bother watching LSPL teams.
Well, yeah, and like they basically the whole reason they even got into LPL was that Sketch decided to like previously in LSPL he'd have like really good games and then he'd have like really questionable games where he'd just make awful decisions. But they started putting him on hyper carries towards like through playoffs, and he kind of carried his team. He's also pretty like decent Urgot player too. The thing that I guess it's weird for me that UP picked Kalista first, not because it's not a strong pick or anything, but I'm wondering if they could have kind of dared EDG to pick it again if they know that Deft is really uncomfortable on that champion.
Yeah,
but getting Sketch on that was really important for this game.
And you have to think, like, they did so well with Amy on Echo, right? And then Long had a powerful performance on Hecarim in the previous game. So usually in LPL, it's been getting Long his power pick, going from there. And they didn't go with that route this time. So it is very surprising from that perspective. I think that that actually, I mean, obviously you can't rate LSPL and LPL performances together, but I don't think their new identity has been as successful. In a way, moving away from Sketch because he does have inconsistent positioning is a good idea, but I don't know. I have mixed feelings about Unlimited Potential. I think they're all inconsistent in different ways.
Yeah, they are. And like Amy, like when I was watching this draft for the first time, I saw Amy going on Nunu and I was like, "Oh god, no," because he's just not like his Echo performance was really good and I feel like Echo is definitely a champion that like suits Amy really well because he can go in, he can make plays, he can be aggressive. His thing is kind of that he's often over aggressive and makes again really poor decisions on when to go in. And his Nunu is like pretty underwhelming overall. Like all of it. He's really struggled in tank meta.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I do think that one interesting thing about since we're bringing up the Nunu pick, we also know that EDG is going to pick Evelynn into
Right.
Nunu because they've pretty much announced to the entire world that Clearlove likes to pick Evelynn into Nunu. So you have to kind of be expecting that to happen. The reason why Evelynn is very good is against Nunu is one, she can remove like all slowing effects. You can't really track her, so that makes invading her jungle really, really difficult. She's just extremely good in like grouped fights where with her ultimate, which is what Nunu does extremely well in as well in terms of like his zoning and things like that. So she just counters Nunu in a bunch of different ways. But she's going to not scale as well as him, especially if Clearlove goes Warrior Enchantment. So that's kind of also the caveat. Also, I think the Callista pick, in a way, forces Edward Gaming into more of an earlier power spike composition in some regards. Obviously, Echo scales really well, but Echo is good at pretty much all points of the game. Just because...
And as does Hecarim, with TP Smite especially.
Yep.
Like, he scales so well into the late game, too.
But in terms of, like, the jungle pick, and I think the bottom lane picks, you're going to want to see something that's more mid-game focused, because of Callista's 2-item power spike, you want to be able to contest that. Yeah, and then just UP so far going for a lot of AoE with the Callista, who can, like, use the Hurricane build, the Nunu, the Maokai.
Here's where UP's draft gets really good.
Yeah.
Their last two picks.
Obviously Brand.
Yeah. Bran Morgana. Woo!
Yeah. Twisted Fate. We saw in the previous game Palm played Twisted Fate, and he used it to immediately find Amy and kill him. In this game, it works especially well against EDG's jungler because his ultimate reveals stealth targets. So pretty much you can, as soon as he hits level 6, and he'll hit level 6 before Clearlove does, you can immediately start to make that Evelynn's life like really unfortunate. And then the Annie Callista lane is really strong. It's not as strong as it used to be when Annie's auto attack range was so long, but it's still really, like, you don't want Annie thrown in your face. So it's like one of the best Callista laning partners in terms of like really aggressive. Like, you don't want to 2v2 that typically. So
I'm deft going for Corky. Which I am, again, reiterates what you said about trying to match the Kalista power spike with the Corky. And Corky's been played generally a little bit more lately, both in China and Korea, just to get down like that mid-game damage. Again, he had like a falling off point when hyper carries came back into fashion during the tank meta, but now we're starting to see him more again.
yeah, you want a lot more. We are seeing a lot more utility and a lot more safety on the AD carries coming out a lot of the time, and especially if you have a Hecarim, you're having a lot of strong 80 scaling damage coming from Koro. Hecarim against Maokai does pretty well in terms of his ability to like eventually just push Maokai out. We already discussed the jungle matchup. It's pretty favored to Clearlove, except for the fact that we have... Yeah. And the TF pick also means that you want to make really good use of warding, right? And just vision control in general. So there's a lot of pressure on Heart in that regard. Heart, very, very strong. If you listen to their comms, like commanding voice, really strong control of the game in terms of... And then the one thing that gives, I think, Unlimited Potential the edge over a lot of these teams with really, really young players across the board, because most of the UP players are extremely young, is that they do have Heart, who has, like, that experienced shot calling and that, just, I don't know, intelligence about the game from his days on Samsung Blue.
And I think it's important to note, like, I don't know, I'm of the opinion, and maybe it's an unpopular one, that he's actually become a lot better in his more recent games than when he was on Samsung Blue, and it could honestly be just because he's tasked with kind of guiding all of these younger players. I feel like he is more of an authoritative voice on this team than he was on his previous team.
Yeah, and I think just also his mechanics have improved too. It's like really interesting to talk about a 28-year-old player, right? I think he's 28, he might be 27 still, that regardless, you know, is in many ways hitting his prime, which isn't necessarily reflected in Unlimited Potential standings, but definitely I think in his individual performances.
Yeah. Well, and the thing about UP as a whole in LPL so far is that they've kind of been this team with like really good ideas and then not necessarily the best execution of those ideas. Like I feel like when you watch them play, they're always thinking about how or like what they want to do or like how they want to counter their opponents, but they don't always execute it correctly.
And this movement here, immediately they want to put some pressure on Clearlove, because the key to Edward Gaming, like Edward Gaming's backbone is always their jungler. And so also they have like having that Annie allows them to invade like fairly safely early on and just put some vision on down, know where Clearlove is going to start, like which camp he's going to start on. Also really important against an Evelynn to know kind of their pathing and their trajectory, because it's really hard to track. And here Heart is moving up again to place more vision over here. Again, they're worried about the Annie, so they're kind of like running away from Unlimited Potential. Please no. I mean, at MSI we saw them use an Annie and an invade very successfully against SK Telecom, so they know all about that. Super awesome. She's just chasing.
Woo!
But yeah, immediately they identify that the key to beating Edward Gaming is keeping Clearlove down. And Heart just follows him and harasses him, and they have like the Sentinel with them, so even if...
No.
This is just like, obviously Echo having really, really good base damage, the fact that and scaling damage and just numbers and just
ridiculous,
stupid.
Yeah.
And the fact that Twisted Fate isn't naturally a good laner, the best he's going to want to do is just push out the wave and look for opportunities to use Destiny Gate and just survive. He doesn't really want to be in lane against Echo. So
yeah, the point of him in this composition is not to be a good laner, it's to be able to keep track of Clearlove and also be able to basically gank him from nearly anywhere.
Echo just has so much CC, like on every ability, and so much damage, like on every ability, and I don't understand why this champion was made the way it was. Okay.
But people aren't doing well with him, so he's probably gonna get buffed.
Unlimited Potential went ahead and made the decision to do the lane swap, which I think makes a lot of sense. We're talking about how Quirky hits like the Trinity Force Power Spike. Quirky's going to be really strong at like level 4 or 5, do a lot of burst. And that's actually going to be pretty strong against Callista early on, so...
And they also want to be able to make sure, and this, we'll touch upon this again, I'm sure, in this review, but they also want to push those towers down early, to your point, while they can. And I feel like UP does do a really good job of playing out this early game, like having Sketch push down that turret in the top. which will be coming up as Heart goes up here.
And in terms of how important map control is to their composition, because if you have control of Edward Gaming's jungle by taking those first ring of turrets, you can literally like TF port wherever you want. And just harass Clearlove as much as often as Destiny Gate is off cooldown. So pushing out those waves is intelligent. Typically you expect to see like a dragon trade here. I don't remember if EDG does this or not. The other thing,
I think, will they return enough? Yeah. Because Amy goes down with Long, which is a good call because they are able to chase them out of the jungle. I forget whether they rotate to Dragon.
The other aspect that's really interesting is that Maokai is going to fare better in a lane swap situation than Hecarim is. Like, Hecarim's not bad in a lane swap situation, obviously, but just because like he doesn't need as much scaling, he pretty much just needs a Righteous Glory, and he's good to go. Again, like, on UP, we have very, very low itemization power spikes. 2-item Callista, like a couple items for Maokai. You're gonna just like get your Cinderhulk and start stacking health on Nunu. Like, he has the passives that he gets from consuming monsters that allows him to just stack health and become really tanky early on.
Yep. And then TF, where you're just basically waiting to be able to use Destiny Gate
and Lich Bane
with a couple of items. Yeah,
is extremely accessible on him. As well as like whatever he chooses for his first item. So first tower does go down. Still no dragon taken. Edward Gaming.
Yeah, okay.
EDG doesn't really prioritize dragons, just because, again, they're going to be happier like answering this fast push.
I'm pretty sure if I recall from the current LPL statistics, though, neither does UP. So it's like,
well, UP, it's kind of a gray area because it's like,
yeah.
Does UP prioritize dragons and just never get them, or
yeah, like, are they just losing their points by this point? So, because if I recall, they're actually one of the worst teams right now for early dragon control. Like,
yep. I processed those stats. Thank you very much.
Thank you for reiterating that, because I couldn't remember whether they were actually the worst.
Yeah.
But yeah, they rotated obviously Sketch back down to the bot lane, and he'll start pushing out, trying to take the bottom.
Yeah, I mean, Corki hits this level 5 power spike. He has a phage, but the thing is that Sketch now has this BF sword, and yeah, Heart is still roaming though, so that's he doesn't really care until level 6. Heart's vision, just watch like how like adamant he is about placing these wards. Like, this is really an incredible, like, obviously the TF pick is really great in terms of winning them the game, but just keeping the wards on Clearlove's camps so they know where he is at almost all times. This is just like a really, he's very persistent about it, so they never get surprised, and Clearlove like pretty much doesn't get a gank off. At this point, like, Clearlove should probably have looked for ganks, and he hasn't been successful, so. Because, again, like, if he's probably going to go Warrior Enchantment and fall off if he doesn't get some early kills. And see, every time he crosses a word, they just ping the map. It's like, there he is! We found him!
Keep tracking him. Like, hide and seek.
And what I mean by, like, the Clearlove being the backbone of Edward Gaming is that he gets a very high percentage of team gold. Here we go. We've got the first Destiny Gate. They did not go for Clearlove, but they did identify that Deft is typically, like, in terms of EDG, way EDG works, is Deft is the one you want to go for right away. And this gets turned just because I think they go way, way too deep.
Yeah.
But it was a good idea in practice, because they had an idea where Clearlove was on the map, and they thought that they could go. But Clearlove, I think, moved faster earlier than they thought he would, and also Koro is good at, Edward Gaming is good at like managing teleports and
Yeah, that's kind of EP in a nutshell, though. Like, good ideas and
Poor execution.
sometimes questionable execution. Yeah.
Hmm. But UP is, I guess, moving on to the dragons. So at this point, like Callista level 6, Annie level 5. So not quite where you want to be in terms of dragon control, but you have a level 6 Maokai, level 7 Callista. So you've got some ability to have a very strong like early dragon fight in terms of the stun and the AoE that you can do. Amy level 6. Or not level 6 yet, level 5. I don't know, I guess they like just ping dragon and they don't have like a level 6 on Annie or a level 6 on Nuno, so like just kidding. I was really confused by that ping. I went way too long.
Gave up on it.
It's just like, nope, that doesn't make any sense.
And then Amy just walks away and Long dies. Right here.
Yeah. And
now they will get, now they'll get the dragon.
Because they do, again, know where Clearlove is. So this game is, again, very much about countering the Evelyn. Pawn goes extremely deep. They do manage to get a kill for it, but
Almost dies.
nope. Gaming is much more practiced in executing those sorts of deep dives than Unlimited Potential, I think we saw. But
I think one thing that I'm realizing about this game, or I don't know, you can correct me if you disagree, but Amy, for his, like, I guess his Nunu is still kind of underwhelming for me, but this whole idea of what UP wants to do with Hearts warding, with keeping track of Clear Love through the TF rather than like straight up trying to like counter jungle him, because obviously we already went over how the Nunu Evelyn matchup is really not in favor of him because you do have to keep track of her. I think it's kind of overcoming or covering up for some of Amy's weaknesses on that champion, where he's just kind of been farming a bit and making his presence known in skirmishes, where I guess, and here's where the thing's gonna freeze. Yeah, we're gonna have this happen a couple times.
Well, they do typically. You don't necessarily want to play Nunu in like a lot of early skirmishes until he hits the level 6, and then you immediately start going for like the buff controls, the dragon controls. So right now he's just, I think he's taken too long to get the 6. And Clearlove, I think, identified that as soon as like Hart actually really telegraphed what he was doing early on by doing those invades and following him around. So I think he identified that he wasn't going to have a lot of successful ganks there, and so he just tried to farm for 6. So that he got ahead of Amy in that regard, and then went for an early kill, which he was successful in getting.
Mm-hmm.
With, what's his name? Pawn.
That mid laner.
Yeah, that one guy.
We'll talk more about him in this game.
Yeah, so we're going on. But see, he's got the level 6 now, he's level 7, so they are going for these invades. They are going for these buff contests. They have level 6 on their Annie, they have level 8 on their Callista, so they have a pretty strong aspect right now. She is going that Bloodthirster first, thank God, not building like Deft. Okay, yeah, second item, Hurricanes, typically better for your ability to pressure lanes and do. Just look at how many blue wards there are on the map.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. It's almost a state of... When they went for that invade, they obviously have the wards congregated around that side of the map because they knew that that was the invade they wanted to go for. And they just really quickly controlled that area. Does damage, bonuses, scales. They scale with levels. They scale with AP. They scale. They have high base damages.
I'm just waiting for pawn to go in like a crazy person.
Okay, pause. Let's skip ahead because we don't really care. See if there's anything interesting to talk about. Okay. So, this is replay that they're covering. Oh, they must have skipped this aspect of the game, but
yeah, I think it cut out, and then this is the replay of it.
This is the first time they do port onto Clearlove, and then when Pawn goes for an answer kill, because again they have so much control at this like time in their itemization, they're able to just win the fight. And they had, again, like the setup, they made the play first, they had everyone in position, and Edward Gaming went way too slow to react. So that was, again, taking advantage of... They had the Lich Bane on the TF. They had the Bloodthirster on the Callista.
Uh-oh.
Cinderhulk Sightstone. It's all Nunu needs. He's totally happy. Maybe some movies in a bit. Yeah, that actually is like pretty pretty. Usually you would see basic boots by now. It's awkward.
Amy doesn't need boots.
He's just relying on that blood boil. Let's go.
Yeah.
That's all you need. And putting the pressure now onto the damage threat. What I do like about their decisions so far is that they haven't focused a lot on Koro, just because I feel like Koro is the type of player that a lot of teams focus him in the top lane, just because I think his laning, his awareness of the map, and then the fact that he doesn't get a lot of attention from his jungler is really obvious. So he's like an easy kill, but his ability to impact a game from behind is actually quite high. And Clearlove and Deft are like the core of the team, the ones that need to do well for EDG to do well. So targeting them instead makes a lot more sense.
Yeah. Heart waiting to try to jump onto Koro and top him. And
yeah, but at this point, Clearlove has been put down quite a bit.
yeah.
So it really, like, the damage that is going to start being this Hecarim, who is positioned for the carry in this, to be the carry in this composition along with Pawn. Really good positioning by Punish in that fight to just target the secondary threat after Koro is down. Because that's kind of how you want to play TF.
Yeah, I was actually really pleasantly surprised. Like I said, he hasn't been a player who's impressed me in the past. But
And I don't think not necessarily like his team fighting is too bad. I just think like in lane he just sometimes dies for no reason. It's just really awkward play from him at times. They do.
Amy's ult is down, so he can't really do anything. At this point, Sketch is just like
Really
out of control.
fed. He was given like a free lane. They weren't able to pressure the advantage with the Trinity Force Corki very well yet, at least. At this point, Corki is still stronger than Sketch, just because he doesn't have that Hurricane yet, and Corki does have that Trinity Force, which is going to do more work for him.
Goes back, picks up the Hurricane.
But the fact that Amy gets the Aegis is actually really good, because they do have like a lot of magic damage with the Echo and the Evelyn and the Corki.
Corki, yeah.
So, Amy also itemizing well. They have Boots and Righteous Glory on the Maokai, so he is good to go. Um, yeah, Lichbane CDR boots on the Twisted Fate. And now we have the Hurricane on the Callista. So this is the perfect time for UP to fight. If they can get into position. But at the same time, we have, again, like the Trinity Force. EDG matched well for the composition. They went for the early to mid-game jungler, the mid-game Corki, AD carry pick. So it's not like a clear cut who has an advantage, but right now UP is definitely in a serious power window on like every single one of their champions. And we still don't have boots on Amy.
Yeah. He doesn't need boots.
Good job. And we have EDG's blue buff warded. Because that is up, so they do have the buff timers on the blue buff. And again, they're identifying where Clearlove is and killing
then
him.
Jumping on him. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Fawn was like, yep, sacrificial lamb so that I can enjoy this blue buff. At this point in the game, I'm not sure why Long is freezing top lane. Seems to me...
Yeah, don't really...
They're still just... I think they're just keep looking for... Because they didn't necessarily get an objective off of that last pick on Clearlove. So it seems to me that they dropped their window and they're kind of reliant in this instance on finding another one of those picks on Clearlove, so they're waiting for the cooldown to come back up. They're waiting for an objective that they can contest off of a Clearlove pick. So that's why they're freezing right now, shoving out this, and he is not freezing. He was freezing for a while, but he is going to start shoving out the waves so that all of the waves are prepped for when that cooldown is back up.
And also Dragon comes back up in a minute, so we'll be able to leverage that too.
Well, yeah, because they do want to get the pick off Clearlove and then go for Dragon. Like, that's probably the objective. Unless they just use it now, for fun. Yeah, they're prepping the area for Dragon, like, they're getting the vision set up. Hart is corralling his little children into the proper area. Just so much control. Like, they're the first team to get in to get this ward control. They have the Nunu. EDG is looking for a pick, but they had the ward down. I think they're looking to set up this flank.
Let's punish Solds back up.
Yeah, and now he has the Zonias, which is even better.
Yeah. Oh, and then, yeah, here we go.
Targeting Clearlove.
They just jump right onto Clearlove.
And they have their front line positioned on the flank, like, so they went in and they had Sketch and Hart positioned off to the side so that they could come in and collapse after so much attention was already put on Long and Amy there. So that was like really, really good setup from Unlimited Potential. They backed off, they waited for the cooldown, they waited for the initiation off of Punished, and the collapse from Long and Amy to go in and start doing the cleanup. And they had a secondary form of initiation if they needed to block more targets. And as a reward, they put a dragon. There's a teleport.
This was something that I, like, absolutely did not understand. from EDG. Like, why?
Maybe they anticipated more dragon damage. They probably
Like, yeah,
like
I don't
Amy
know.
was pretty low, so maybe they thought that they could go in and Cora could get the smite off after killing Amy, but I don't know. It's kind of an awkward decision. Like the other thing about this game is obviously we're focusing more on what unlimited potential does. That's intelligent in how they execute this composition, but EG makes a lot of mistakes.
Yeah.
Like I don't. They let unlimited potential have the role swap. They didn't take that early dragon. Um, they didn't match UP's fast push, which means that they didn't pressure the fact that they had a mid game power spike. They didn't have pressure from pawn to clear out the wards in Clearlove's jungle. Like, Hart was pretty much able to do whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have their own jungle warded. And it was just him by himself. It wasn't like he was traveling with Amy like you typically see in LGD. You usually see the jungle and the support traveling together, so it's a lot harder to punish the person who's warding.
Yeah, fun in this game was
Just
this wasn't his best game.
don't play a champion if you don't know how to play it. Well, he gets away with doing that a lot, and that sounds BM, but like a lot of times he just plays the champion and straight feeds. Like by that standard, this isn't even bad, but usually his team is able to carry them. But
Well, it's more like he makes an impact. So like the way UP ended up negating that was that they didn't really use TF for the laning. They used him for vision of Clearlove. They used him to like jump on Clearlove as in a group of like at least 3 people. And Pawn usually acts as this like kind of distraction for EDG's opponents, but he wasn't really a focus at all in this game, even though he was on like the newest champion who was very strong.
And for me, as Cora dies again, I think the thing about this game that really was impressive was that Unlimited Potential showed an understanding of how Edward Gaming functions as a team and the targets that they put priority on, whereas like a lot of people like to camp the solo laners or think that their threats are a lot of teams seem to camp the solo laners or think that their threats are in the solo laners when really dismantling EDG is about getting to their jungler, getting to their bottom lane, finding advantages in those areas.
Hart slays his old lane opponent.
Because as long as someone is there to carry it, like Cora can usually have an impact from behind. Deft can, if and Pawn isn't really the carry of the team, so
Yeah,
like,
he's not. He usually just is a focal point for opponents to, like, because he makes himself like he usually has presence basically, and he makes his presence known, and so opponents tend to go after him just because he's super obnoxious. But in this game, he really just has no presence whatsoever, just because of what UP chose to focus on the EDG side. Which makes it like really weird that they then like let Spirit have Nidalee in their in their games after this, so they're so well prepared for EDG.
well, maybe that was it. They just prepared for one team. They're like, yeah, we're good. We'll just play Blue Ash. It'll be fun.
And we'll let Spirit have his best champion. And
Pawn randomly using his convergence on nothing.
and Cora's gonna die.
And the way they flanked for Cora there was really intelligent. Like, they cut off the vision and they waited for him to have overextended and then everyone collapsed. And EDG didn't react at all either. They didn't look for objectives, they didn't do anything. They just Pawn randomly used a convergence on nothing.
I think that was the other thing that was weird to see from EDGs. Usually they're a lot more decisive in answering what opponents are doing. Like, so even when the pace of the game might be in another team's control, they're usually really good at recognizing what they can take from the
One
opportunities that the other team's providing.
And one thing we really didn't talk about was why I think Edward Gaming is a little bit out of sorts on this patch is you've suddenly introduced a lot more power picks like the Rise, the Echo, the champion I keep
Yeah.
ranting about how it's broken. And so previously you could pretty much afford to have a ban on Callista every game.
Hmm.
This is no longer the case, so now you have to a lot. Callista is getting through the ban phase more often, so dealing with her becomes necessary. And Deft does not play that champion. Like that's just the way it is. So him
Yeah.
in the first game picking it up was a detriment. They left it open in this game instead of banning it. Like they were put into a position because they were on red side where they had to use bans on Rise. They had to use bans on some other picks that they didn't want to let through as a first pick. Like they made a priority call and they let them have Callista. Whereas that's something that EDG typically always bans.
Yeah. That is a huge glaring weakness in
So
their champions list.
a lot of people have asked me, do you think like EDG can still be strong? It's like, yeah, once Callisto will inevitably be nerfed into the ground and EDG will win worlds. So
Or all it takes is just to wipe like the Rise, and I mean they picked up Echo, but most people do ban it, even though like I'd say only Rookie has had like a really, really strong game on Echo, and then Amy did have a good, fairly good jungle Echo game than the one previous to this. I actually like Echo's jungler better than a mid laner right now.
I think he's pretty good as a top laner too, because of you can just use home guard and then charge in
Yeah.
with TP
I will say, like, this
and ult.
is the best I think I've ever seen Punish play.
Mm-hmm. And again, they're able to just set traps for them using vision. Like because they have such tight control over these jungles and this vision, they just set a trap for Edward Gaming. They had Edward Gaming's buff timers. They killed them at the blue buff. Like they don't even necessarily need a strong objective to press an advantage at this point. They're just they can these
Yeah.
small things that they know EDG wants and manipulate them just because of how strong their vision is and how important it is to this game. So for me, like Heart
Art
was
MVP.
the biggest factor.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, any other closing statements?
No, that's about it. I mean, I really love Unlimited Potential. It made me happy to be able, like, to see them be able to do this, just because I think they are a smart team with good ideas, and some of their players either just might not be necessarily mechanically as gifted as their opponents, or just make really poor decisions in the case of like Amy sometimes, even though I love him. But so I mean, I was really happy to see like their plan actually come together. I thought this was really well thought out, like very smart. And all hearts so happy.
He's so cute. Um,
The fans do not look happy.
yeah.
Probably two things, but yeah.
Like I said, unlimited potential. I think the takeaways here is just um, the maturity that they're capable to have, even though they have inconsistency in their shot calling and ability to understand the enemy team and play around those weaknesses, and just the overall. Even though their players are inconsistent, I think that that gives them an edge over teams like RNG and M3 in the long run. So.
Yeah, for sure. I think that they're definitely the best of like the middle of the pack teams.
Well, lower middle of the pack,
Yeah.
I would say. They're not exactly upper tier middle of the pack. And again, Ever Gaming, I think part of it is just that they are practicing with a wider variety of strategies, a wider variety of styles. So nothing that they have right now is really, really tight, or as tight as we saw some of the stuff that they practiced for MSI. They probably didn't prepare as much for Unlimited Potential. They were originally supposed to have 3 matches this week, and instead they had to have that Hawaii Ellie event. So they were probably focused on, like, what am I going to wear tomorrow instead of playing against the 10th place LPL team. Um, so, yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna overrate Unlimited Potential too much for that. I thought that was really cool what they did and what they showed that they're capable of doing. But I'm also not going to underrate Edward Gaming too much for that. So.
Yeah, I don't think like it's not hit the panic button mode for EDG, and it's not like UP is suddenly like, oh my gosh, they figured stuff out, because as I mentioned previously, they go into their next set and they let Spirit have Nidalee on WE, so.
Yep. And they build Blue Ash. Anyway, so thank you guys for watching. They will continue to improve. Any feedback you can provide would be great. Thank you.
I'm sorry I was so bad. Thank you.
I'm cutting that out. Hi, this is Kelsey, and I'm here with Emily, and we're going to do a video review of the Unlimited Potential versus Edward Gaming Game 2 that happened this past week in LPL Week 3. Or 4. Yes, Week 4. I'm awesome. It's been a blur. So you can see, say hi, Emily.
Hello, all.
So we're pretty much going to mute the stream and do it over. Obviously, we're not casters, well, Emily has casted before, and she's fine at it. And she's fine at it. I'm just, like, really terrible, so we're not going to do the play-by-play thing. And obviously, the game itself is really well casted by Frostgren and Seda. We're just going to cover some details or some niches, especially, like, from the Unlimited Potential side, because we've watched them in LSPL, we have some of their background, etc. And also talk about some of the item and the warding interactions that you only really catch, like, if you're watching the game a second time anyway. So, that's what we're going to do here, and so let's get started.
Victor, Rez, Bando. Victor is probably just because the previous game to this one, Punished was on Victor, and he actually did a really good job of, you know, doing the damage when they needed him to. I'm not, like, a huge Punished fan. I'm not really convinced, although he does have a good game in this game. But his Victor in the previous game was really good, and they set up team fights well for him to just be able to, you know, laser straight down.
Yep. And also Victor right now, he kind of went from like a mid-game champion that fell off because his hex core could only be upgraded once, and it was like kind of a waste of an item slot in many ways once you got to the late game. Now it can be upgraded multiple times. All of the upgrades like buff his stats, they buff his abilities. It's just, he's like really, really good scaling. He's in a really good place right now, especially since they fixed the rework, so makes sense to ban it in a lot of situations if you know that the enemy team has a Victor player.
And I
started with some of the picks and bans and stuff. So the first ban from Unlimited Potential side is Sivir. If you know anything about me and follow me on Twitter at all, you know that I'm a big fan of teams that ban Sivir because I think she is probably the strongest champion in the game in terms of what she provides for a team. Like, she does a lot of damage with the auto attack reset, the fact that the Ricochet does bonus damage, all this other stuff that's really, really strong and overlooked, and the fact that she gets like a movement, attack speed increase in her ultimate. So she's just strong in terms of damage, in terms of utility, in terms of like the spell shields. She's just like a really great champion. So, and she's really good at aiding like teams that aren't necessarily the strongest at rotations because she's very straightforward. She gives you like the first towers early. And so I think she's like a really strong champion for EDG in particular, especially since Deft is really good at using cooldowns. Alright.
Yeah, the whole reason they even got into LPL was that Sketch decided to, like, previously in LSPL he'd have like really good games and then he'd have like really questionable games where he'd just make awful decisions. But they started putting him on hyper carries towards, like, through playoffs, and he kind of carried his team. He's also pretty, like, decent Urgot player too. The thing that I guess it's weird for me that UP picked Kalista first, not because it's not a strong pick or anything, but I'm wondering if they could have kind of dared EDG to pick it again if they know that Deft is really uncomfortable on that champion.
Yeah,
But getting Sketch on that was really important for this game.
and you have to think like they did so well with Amy on Echo, right? And then Long had a powerful performance on Hecker in the previous game. So usually in LPL, it's
Cinderfish.
yeah. So also LeBlanc ban is usually pawn targeted because he is like such a strong laner in terms of what he likes to play. Um, the
Rise, obvious. And then,
right.
yeah, you want to talk about Urgot?
Urgot, as soon as they banned the Urgot, you kind of telegraphed that they wanted to pick the Callista. So, especially since Edward Gaming in the previous game had such a poor performance on Callista, they just didn't ban it. I think to me that suggests that they weren't treating the team very seriously, just kind of letting them have it. Or they prioritized the fish because in LPL, Long has been the primary carry, but I feel like in LSPL, this was kind of like a secret that they didn't really pull out until like this game. Sketch was really the carry of the team, so and then a lot of LPL teams don't bother watching LSPL teams.
Well, yeah, and
So.
like they basically